All right, so Amick, you are what I consider a renaissance man of sorts. You do so many different things, and we're going to get into those things today. I mean, you've recorded music for huge networks. You have playlists on Soundstripe, but I want to know what kicked off the Amick Cutler empire to allow you that sort of flexibility and freedom, so others might do the same.
Yeah, so that's kind of a loaded question because the fact that you say I am a Renaissance man, my answer is appropriate.
Okay.
It's not like a straightforward answer. And I would say, over the years, just at the end of the day, you kind of just chase what you love,
Okay.
And then the way life evolves is usually you chase what you love, and most people don't get to do what they love. The reality is that you're stopped dead in your tracks in terms of whatever. There's not a career out there, or you don't can't carve your own path. You don't have the right education or whatever. So for me, I remember going to college early on for design marketing, because that was my passion. My dad was like the guru of multi-level marketing, which I was like, I am not going to be that guy.
What multi-level marketing did he do?
Oh, all of them.
Because my parents were in Amway.
Oh, my dad was in
Okay,
Amway,
okay.
Melaleuca. I mean, everyone you could think of. But he was a real people person, so always had people over the house. At the age of 9, 10, I would always be in those meetings just sitting like my son is today, just chilling, watching dad do his thing.
Yeah.
But I remember just being like, it's cool how he does what he does so passionately. I know I don't really want to do that. But what it taught me was basically just, being able to just kind of go out there and do it. So I remember when I was in college, I was like, I had already had the skill sets designing business cards from my dad's friends at 9 years old, learning the Adobe Creative Suite. I mean, I mastered Adobe by the time I was 13 or 14.
So you had this skill set early on.
Skill set just because I had the time. As a kid, you're either playing video games, playing outside, whatever. And I was like, well, I'd spend my hours, teaching myself things,
Pre-YouTube, where were you learning?
It was all self-taught. My dad, usually what I would say is I'd talk with friends, ask questions of like, hey, how would you do this? And they'd say, oh, Corel Draw, or they throw out some sort of program, and I didn't know anything about it. I'd convince my dad to go buy a CD-ROM with the software, or if he didn't have the money, I would try to get it pirated.
Totally.
At 13, you're just trying to do what you can just to experiment.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, it's just experimentation. And then after a few years of doing that, getting really good, through high school, and then college, and then it was like, what do I want to do with my life? So my mom and dad said, go to college. Decided, well, this makes sense. I'll do design. Dropped out 6 times.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it was 6 times.
How many years did you graduate?
Oh, I never graduated.
Oh, my word. This is great.
6 times. I went, and I was like, every class. The problem was I had excelled so much in my own private life that by the time they would teach me stuff, I could never get to the point where they would teach me anything new.
So you were just bored?
Just bored.
Okay.
Out of my mind. And I'm paying money to be bored.
Yeah.
And paying money to get a degree for something I already knew. So that's really what my logic, and everybody kept saying, well, you're not going to get a job unless you get a degree. So that's
you were
why
in
I
that transition period where college is still so important, but it's like not.
Yeah, because this is like 99, 2000.
Yeah.
It was still... I mean, having a creative job was kind of a pipe dream. I mean, people did it, but like in terms of actually making it, it was reserved for those who did full marketing degrees and did all that stuff. And I was like, man, that is just not my thing. That's just not how I'm wired. So I gave my best attempt 6 times.
Dang.
And it was like after like 3rd time, I remember all my art teachers actually said, if you'll come to class, because I was getting hundreds, it wasn't the problem. They were just like, you're basically teaching everybody that, like not showing up, being lazy is okay. So my art teachers literally said, if you come to class, we'll let you teach the course.
Whoa.
So they actually let me teach the courses. I went to class. I loved it. I started teaching. And I think that's where the transition went from what I have in my mind, my heart, my life, things that I'm exploring, experiment, things I'm passionate about. It doesn't really mean as much until you can connect it with humans, with relationships or whatever, or with, jobs and all that. But at the end of the day, it's really people. It's like how you're connecting those things with people. So the fact that they gave me an opportunity so early on to just share passionately what I was learning, they just kicked back, got their salaries, and watched Amick just teach the class.
You were paying them to let you teach.
It was
that's
pretty
fantastic.
wild.
Oh, my word.
But I gained so much confidence in that season.
Yeah.
And still never finished college. But it was like I think that was the confidence boost I needed to be like, I could do this. If an art teacher that's concerned with me getting degrees letting me teach, then I'm like, there's something here that he's confident enough to let me just do my thing without a degree.
Yeah.
So I was like, I probably have the knowledge. So at that point, I just decided to kind of just start experimenting, started getting freelance jobs early on in college, waiting tables to make money. But like, I would always work more really for free. I would just, hey, can I design a logo? Can I design a website? Can I do whatever? And I would do it for free because I would just have the side job that paid the bills. And I was like, the pressure was off, but I just would grind and grind and grind just to get good at whatever I could get good at.
So in that journey was the goal to find what you actually wanted to do, or was the goal just pure competence?
The goal at the time was just honestly just doing what I love to do.
So you were liking all of it.
Because I think a lot of guys, talents, hobbies, things like that. I mean, surfing. There's like just stuff that people would say it's a hobby. For me, like getting really good at creative, whatever, software, creative outlets, it was like a hobby for me. The caveat was that you can actually start making money doing it. But I wasn't really concerned with the job portion. It was just, I needed to get what was in my brain out. And the only way to get it out was to get really good at software or something so that I could actually get it out.
A lot of us have ideas, but ideas are worthless without execution.
Exactly. And over the course of the years, so kind of getting back to the Renaissance thing, I'm a high visionary. I'm a guy that typically, I didn't know this early on, but now that I have so many years of experience in the business world, I'm a guy that can walk into a cold room where I don't know anybody and they don't really know like what they want, but they kind of are like, hey, here's where our business has been. These are some thoughts and ideas we have. And as they're just talking, it's like my brain paints this picture, just like on the fly.
Okay.
And then within about anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, my brain just somehow connects all these dots. And then they're like, what do you think? And I just instantly just kind of share a vision. And usually it's, 50-50. 50% it's things that I know about, I know how to accomplish, I know how to give them the results. But then 50% is me really dreaming in real time. So like, it may be things that are like, this would be really cool to do this. And I don't really necessarily know how to do that, but I'm going to sell it because it's just in my brain. And that's just how I've been wired.
That makes sense. So you're almost like, hey, I want to try this. Yeah. And in this instance, it fits with their goals.
Yep.
And so I want to push myself creatively, and this is an avenue in which I can do it with a purpose.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, I want to walk away and people be excited and passionate about what they're doing or whatever I don't want to limit them just because I'm limited. So I've always set benchmarks of like, if I have the opportunity, I want to get them pumped up about something, even if I don't know how to do it. And this is where the Renaissance part, I would go figure out how to do it.
Got it.
So I would sell people on it, and they're like, dude, this sounds amazing. Like I remember one day I was sitting in a meeting, and there was for a book. They had written a book and wanted me to do a book trailer video for it. And the whole book was called Living Among Lions. And they're just talking, spitballing about how, man, the only way to really, it was kind of the story of Daniel in the Bible, relating to the story of Daniel and the lions. And they're like, I don't know how to get this story really across without a real lion. And I was like, no problem. We'll get the MGM lion in this video. I literally said that, right? Sell it. They're just like blown away.
Yeah.
Did he really just say that?
Yeah.
Sign the contract. And I literally am like, how am I going to get the MGM
Wait,
lion?
you literally, like, that was like part of the contract.
It was in the contract.
Oh my gosh.
So I spent the first week literally trying to figure out an agent in a management company. Found the MGM lion in LA. Oh my gosh. Got it. Basically secured the lion with a trainer in a warehouse.
Yeah.
And flew out there.
Oh my gosh.
And literally in the middle of this warehouse, at the time another guy was working for me, goes out there in this warehouse, shoots it with this terrifying lion. And it's the actual one that's at the end of the MGM, promo.
Yeah.
And did it. And it was crazy because, it's just like a crazy story, but that's really, what I've always just how I live my life. It's like, if I can dream it up, I want to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And then you just eventually get good at a lot of stuff. And, and seasons change. Sometimes I'm doing it all. Some seasons I'm only doing one thing. Some seasons I'm doing a couple things. It just kind of depends on how you roll.
What have you found puts you in the right rooms to be able to pursue those dreams? What was like I said, what was the kind of the thing that allowed you the freedom to no longer be at those jobs of waiting tables and stuff?
So two things predominantly. One is a ton of risk. I'm a guy, which my son can tell you, like I don't allow everyday fears, everyday pressures, like, you know, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to afford my mortgage? How am I going to pay my car payment? Like, there's just all that stuff that usually keep people locked in. I've never lived my life that way. Okay. I've always been willing to live in a cardboard box and love life. Like, that's the key. It's like, if I have nothing but I love life, then I have everything. And it's interesting, by just having that mentality, you will pursue and take any risk necessary to get, maybe not get you where you want to be 10 years from now, but it will get you where you need to be the next step. And then the next step. Yeah. And then risks and risks. And people always tell me, I have mind-blowing stories I could tell you just for days. You ever see the movie Big Fish?
No.
All right, you should watch it.
Okay.
Big Fish is a funny story, but basically it's this guy, he's got a strained relationship with his father. And his father, the reason why his father's got crazy stories, but nobody believes his father's stories. It's just like, you know, his whole life, and everyone's like, oh, whatever, Dad. And at the end of the movie, I don't want to spoil it, but he dies in the funeral, and everybody that he had talked these stories about shows up at the funeral, and no one could believe that it was true.
Oh, my word.
And that's kind of how my life has been. Okay. And people always say, like, how, like you just asked the question, opportunities, how did you meet these people? How did this happen? And all I could say was that it's literally putting yourself out there, being willing to do whatever for an experience, because you never know, like, where that connection is going to happen.
Absolutely.
You know, and sometimes it means leaving everything you've ever known for one experience and never know if it's going to be fruitful or not. I sold everything. I mean, I had worked 10 years to build a business and everything I ever dreamed of, working at home, watching my kids grow up. And then in one night decided to sell it all.
I remember you guys hit the road, right?
Hit the road, bought a camper, just traveled as bare bones as you can. And most people be like, why would you do that? Yeah. But for me, it was, that's what the day, like when I woke up that day, I was like, that's what I needed. It was actually more ludicrous to hold on to everything I had and try to live life in happiness than it was just to let it all go and just see what the happiness could offer the next day, you know?
So this is a question that I have, because sometimes spouses have different goals or visions. Is your wife a kindred spirit?
Oh, we are as polar opposite as you could possibly imagine.
Okay, this is great. Yep. Praise the Lord. Because it's interesting. I'm hearing two things, and I'm thinking about how it relates to myself and my wife. My wife, honestly, is probably a little bit more like you. She's more like, well, money's for experiences, so let's use it. I am more like, I grew up, my formative years were the 2009 crash. So my parents lost everything. So we went from like living on the lake, $1 million home, multiple boats, like living the life. I was a professional athlete, not because I made enough money to do it, but because my parents made enough money to let me do it. Yep. It all falls apart. We go from living on the lake to an apartment that we did not own, having to call my dad, who's now working in Vegas, to try and find any work, to then ask if we can buy food. Like that's the framework at which my formative years were constructed. And so I'm very much somebody who has quite a bit of fear of the crash, because it was so overwhelming to me as a 13-year-old. And so the reason for all that context, how do you and your wife work together with you shooting for the moon and maybe her being more of the conservative thinker?
Yeah, so it's kind of like our family mantra. And over the years, what we've always said is like, let the fruit of the tree tell the story. Okay. And what that basically means is that you can look at a tree and call it an apple tree, or call it dead, call it fruitful, or whatever you want to say. But at the end of the day, the fruit is going to be the evidence of whether the tree was healthy, what kind of tree it was, whether it's plentiful, whether it's lacking, all those things. So I've always had grand ideas. And what I've always done with my wife is that I've never pushed her into avenues that's unsafe, terrifying, makes her feel like really guarded. I've always just said, let the fruit of the idea that I have basically be the proof in the pudding. Okay. You know, like, so I'd say, this is where I'm headed. And she's like, prove it. So I'll give her a season or whatever, 3 months of just to prove that this could be life-giving or joyful or whatever. Okay.
But will you keep doing something on the side to provide?
Yeah, I always provide. Okay. And that's what I'm saying, where the risk comes is I take risk in other areas and allow that fruit and I'll bring back the fruit and be like, taste this. And she's like, you're right. That fruit is good.
Okay.
And then it's enough for her to weigh the cost. And she's like, he's not just leaving me on a wild goose chase. There's actual fruit there. But it does take her a little risk to latch on. Like, so the camper life, she was totally against it.
Okay.
I mean, like, you're a madman, Amick. I'm never doing that. And I remember I was like, cool, no big deal. Because we've done this in our whole marriage. Like, I don't ever even like throw a pity party, or I don't pout. I'm like, oh, I didn't get my way. I'm like, okay, if it's supposed to be, it'll happen.
Okay.
So in the background, I'm always like thinking like, I'm going to take these risks. I'm going to try to gather the fruit to show her, whatever.
Yeah.
And a year later, she comes to me and says, you know what? Let's move in a camper and do this.
Interesting. So you planted the seed, and the fruit the tree started to grow in her mind of what the possibilities could be.
Yep. And she came to me on her own, and it was game over when she did that. I didn't even have to think about it. I was like, yeah. So we literally listed the house. I dissolved my whole business, literally gave away my whole client list.
Yeah.
Took like one retainer client and then hit the road and lived like that for 3 straight years.
That is the question that I want to answer, even for myself, is you've always kept something in the pocket. Has that something always changed?
100% always changed.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say I'm confident in the foundational skills of what I offer on a daily basis.
Okay.
And that is robust in a sense, because I have history with songwriting and licensing. I have history with creating mini documentaries and short films and running cameras and photography and branding and all the things. So in a sense where some people chase one thing, I do have that ability to fall back wherever the season blows.
Yeah.
So like right now, I literally have shifted complete industries 2 years ago. I'm doing 100% of my business comes from an industry that I knew nothing about 2 years ago.
Was that because of a relationship? And your
100%
your beauty
because of
brand
beauty
stuff
brands.
now.
100% beauty brands.
Okay.
And it was, 2 years ago. I didn't even own a camera. I mean, I've done photography for years.
Is that because you sold all your gear when you dissolved your company?
Sold it all.
Okay.
And didn't need it at the time because I was doing more branding stuff.
Yeah.
And then it was like, hey, popped up, your name came across. Would you brand this perfume company? I was like, I knew nothing about perfume, but yeah. And it's kind of laughable because just knowing the kind of person I am, I mean, I'm like just this hillbilly redneck from the South. And I'm literally branding these bougie brands.
Yeah.
And they love it. I don't know how it works, but it works.
That's fantastic.
But then, so that went through relationship. Mm-hmm. They needed the product photography. And they're like, you can do photography too? And I was like, yeah. But I didn't even own any cameras and lenses or nothing because I sold it. But I said, yeah. I signed the dotted line, said I'll do it.
Yeah.
Went and bought all the gear.
Yep.
Shot the first time I had ever shot product photography in my life, shot it. And then got 2 other clients immediately after them just seeing those photos.
Cool.
And 100% of my business now is beauty, branding, and photography.
Wow.
It's crazy.
So it's being ready for when me and Caleb were talking about this. It's about being ready when luck strikes.
Absolutely.
And luck is not more of an ethereal thing. It's more of do you have the skill set when the opportunity comes along to be able to say yes and then deliver. But like you said, sometimes you don't even need to know how to deliver, but you need to be willing to put the work in to deliver.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of people, like, I invest in myself, and that's all I need. I don't invest to make money. I know the investment, that term means a lot of things, but I invest daily in who I am, what I'm passionate about. I'm invested in relationships. Like, I mean, I don't even know how many years I've been doing this. I'm 41, so 30 straight years I've been doing what I've been doing.
Wow.
And over 30 years, I can honestly say I haven't had one client that didn't like have a great relationship. I mean, no issues, no nothing. And that's because at the end of the day, the relational thing means way more to me than the money, And I think if you keep that right, and it's all about relational, when, luck strikes that you're saying, it's not really luck.
Yeah.
It's just people are looking for competent people who love what they're doing and are honest.
Great point.
And you could say it's lucky, but no, if you line me up with 10 other guys who are self-absorbed, selfish, only care about themselves, don't care about the people, I can guarantee you they're going to choose me every time over those 10 people.
Yeah.
Just because I care about the person more.
Yeah.
Regardless of the work. And that's been the testament of the work I've had is, just going out, rubbing shoulders with people, making sure they, feel great, make sure they know I'm for them.
Yeah.
You know, and then when that opportunity comes knocking, who are they going to call?
Absolutely. So when you think about initially getting started and doing that and pursuing that, is there a certain people that let's say you want to focus on videography.
Yeah.
Like, are you just simply going out and looking for people shooting video? Or are you really looking for anybody to just spend time with? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you conceptualize, yes, just being in it for people. Yes, just enjoying people. But then also thinking about, like, let's say you have a family. You have responsibilities.
Yeah.
How do those two intermingle? How have they intermingled for you? How old were you when you got married?
I was 23.
Okay, so fairly young. I think I was probably like 25. So yeah, even younger than I was. And so from this, basically the start of your career, you've been committed to have to provide.
Yep.
Has that ever been a struggle with you and your wife on how you spend your time?
Not really.
Okay.
So I'm a highly efficient person at what I do.
Okay.
But I also, like, I'm not a workaholic by any means. I've always worked from the philosophy that, like, I want to get as good as I can with such precision potency that one drop, like, it's like like a thing of like water.
Yeah.
Like one drop of lemon juice will be enough that you could taste it. Like,
Totally.
That's how I want my work. It'd be so potent that I might be able to get a week's worth of work done in 1 hour. I'm talking like I do not work full time.
Okay.
I mean, I do full-time work, and I'm the max out maybe 15, 20 hours a week.
Okay.
Like, and that's like a lot of work.
And do you have anybody who works with you to help carry the load? Or...
Yeah. So I go through seasons, if the contracts, can support help, I'll have someone come on for seasonal, or if there's just things that I know it's going to be stress. Like, the biggest thing too is stress. A lot of people can carry so much stress and anxiety with their work.
Yeah.
It kills you. It kills your joy. It kills the work. You don't enjoy it. It's just, and I've always been so in tune with my body, my health, and my mind. I don't tolerate stress at all.
So if you sense it,
I sense it. It's
something's
out.
Wrong.
And it's gone. Like,
okay.
You ask my wife, I mean, things that I love, I'll cut out. Like, if I know it's stressful, in an hour, I'll be making calls like, I'm never doing this again. Where most people will be like, how could you do that? For me, I'm like, I don't want to live another minute with stress and anxiety. So I'm willing to cut out 20 grand of steady income.
Yeah.
For no stress, because I know that it's going to bring such a more joy in life, and I'm going to have the freedom to go sit at a coffee shop, do these things.
Yeah, totally.
And this will make up the 20 grand because I will meet people who are life-giving that just want to be a part of whatever.
Yeah.
And it's always done that. I always get the work. The work ain't the problem. It's just sometimes getting to a point where you work so much, I'm saying that anxiety creeps in. Like, even, my family could tell you, I have turned down more money than I've actually made.
Dang.
And I've made a good amount of money, but I've turned more down than I've actually made, because I knew that was going to add stress or anxiety in my life that I didn't need.
And the power of that is not the fact that the amount you needed, not you wanted, but you focus on the amount you need rather than want.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've always modeled our lifestyle that way, because, we've gone through seasons where Christy comes knocking on the door and it's like, hey man, it's like bank account's getting low. I'm getting a little nervous or whatever.
Yeah.
And we'll have a conversation. And I think early on in the marriage, it'd make her freak out a little more, because she was like, how are we going to pay the bills? Well, now what we do, and I think we've done this for the last 8 to 10 years or so, is we shift our lifestyle to meet our means. Okay. So, like, rather than freak out and be like, oh no, we got to go stress ourselves out and go get more work and not see our kids. We're just like, you know what? We're going to cancel whatever monthly subscriptions, things that are tallying up those things, or whatever. Or we don't need our second car, so we get rid of this. Whatever, we go from season to season and flex how we can live our life so the stress stays low, and I don't have to just go make stuff happen.
Yeah.
Because if you're happy and you're joyful, like, I know you're living this life right now where things have shifted in your personal life in a good, awesome way, with work and stuff. And I know probably mentally and heart, you feel a little freer, feel a little more passionate and joyful.
Yeah.
I would venture to say you're going to be way more successful in everything you do, you put your hands to, just by that alone.
Yeah.
Certainly you're going to, all the cool stuff too, but just by having your heart like at rest, it's insane how much more productive and successful you will be just at that.
I was gonna say you clear yourself up for clarity of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, when you do put in the work, it's like you said, less time.
Yep.
Do you think less time to get the result you want is due to skill building and less stress?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, it's getting really good. Like I always look at just analogies in the business world. Like, so think of a guy who cuts grass. He's a lawn guy, and people say, well, you get really good at cutting grass and you can make a lot of money. No, I would say you actually get really good at growing grass and you can make a ton of money because you're going to get to cut the grass too. So that's how I've always been, like, because if I'm growing the grass better than everybody else, guess what? I'm cutting the grass twice as much as the guy who's just cutting grass.
Okay.
Right?
What does that mean for creators?
So creators, like I'm thinking, how am I going to nurture the relationship? How am I going to grow this person? How am I going to mentor them, get in their life, whatever, to a point to where they're naturally going to go to me for all the creative things.
Okay.
Because I'm growing their life in a way and depositing things in their life and making their life just more fruitful. So we're like, no one does that for me.
Okay.
Everybody else just comes and takes.
Yes.
But these people are coming, and I've always modeled my life with that, with mentoring. There's a lot of guys that I've helped, and I do it every season. I have a guy or two that I bring in. I mentor them in what they want to do. I invest in them for nothing in return. And those are usually the ones that come back and literally ask me to help work with them because of what I've invested. And so I know there's a lot of analogies in the creative field that we could go with, but at the end of the day, it's just investing in them, making their life fruitful. And like I said, like the lawn terms, you'll be able to cut all the grass you want because you're making it grow faster.
Absolutely. And so when you're like investing in those relationships, is it really just like a mental game of investment? Like what you're doing is you're helping open up ideas in their minds, helping them get more free in their time, in their thought processes, like you're saying now.
Yep. A lot of it's people just feel stuck, and that changes from person to person. I remember meeting with a guy one time. He was slinging coffee at what's that little coffee shop across from Makers?
Oh, Bodacious.
Bodacious.
Yeah.
And he was just depressed.
Yeah.
And I remember walking in there, seeing him, and I'm like, "How's it going?" He's like, "Not good." And he was about to clock in. And I was like, "Hey, you want to talk about it?" He's like, "I actually don't have time." I said, "What if I come tomorrow?" I said, "You work tomorrow?" He said, "No." I said, "Why don't we come tomorrow and we just talk?" And he's like, "Okay." And I didn't know where that conversation was going to go, but I just knew I felt like a tugging, right? Showed up, sit down. I was like, "So what's going on?" He says, "I'm here, but I don't want to be here." He said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life. And he started kind of going through, this is what my parents expect. This is what all these people expect. And I was like, all right, I'm going to kind of take you on a journey. If you'll just humble yourself and just be like, okay with the process, I want to spend 30 minutes and I'm just going to ask you a bunch of random questions that you're going to feel like make no sense. But if you're honest, I think we're going to get somewhere. And that's all I did. I just took a notebook and I literally was like, what excites you in life? What makes your wheels start turning? Like if you have an experience today at 1:00, what makes you lay in bed and think about it? Just little things like that. So we wrote it down. And at the end of that 30 minutes, we found out that he had a natural gift to see like film directing, like write stories and write films. He had never worked a camera before. He had never even knew anything about film directing.
Yeah.
But just based off the questions, I was like, I think that's what you're meant to do. And he's like, what?
Yeah.
Spent the next 6 months literally teaching him how to work a camera. He wrote a film, created a short film, submitted it to the Berlin Film School, got accepted, and today he's in Berlin.
Oh my gosh.
100% as a film director at the Berlin Film School. All of that because at Bodacious, he was slinging coffee, and I saw that he just wasn't happy, and he needed that nudge of could it be possible that I was made for something more? Well, the only way he's going to believe that is if somebody like me who's actually been down those roads grabs him by the arm and just says, yeah, you can. Let me get you just far enough for you now. You get the confidence to kind of explore it and see if you like it. He loved it. Yeah. Met his wife over there. I mean, it was crazy.
That's insane. Yeah, that's amazing. I just think how often, like you're saying, with the focus on money, we don't have time to expand our minds to let alone those around us, let alone our own interests and desires. Yeah. I mean, I think about that. I mean, me and my wife got married before we finished college. And since that day of marriage, I've literally just been thinking about how I can provide for her. And this is like the first time in 7 years of our marriage where I thought about doing something I was interested in myself. And I've built a really cool career making YouTube videos about laptops, but it still isn't what I want to do, which is the weirdest thing because I've been focused on providing enough for what we need. How are you able to open him up to see that opportunity and to have the confidence to pursue it? Was it because you equipped him with what he needed?
I think it was also he had some struggles at home where his mom and dad were super supportive of him, but they had expectations about, because he didn't have any fruit on his tree of like, you would be able to pay the bills or you would be able to be successful in anything other than school. That was just naturally as a mother and father, like, well, you need to stay in school. You need to be I think at the time he was like I think he was going for like engineering or something.
Yeah, something stable, something safe, very techy, steady.
Yeah, safe, steady. We've seen this done before.
Yeah.
If you finish it out.
Yeah.
And equipping him with the skill that literally, I mean, his mom came to me. I was like, I thought I was in trouble because she didn't know me. She's Mom. Like, you've been meeting with my son, like, and she told me the joy that it had sparked. Like there was a difference in him. And then on top of that, she's like, he actually is good at what you were saying that he's good at. And I was like, yeah. And he got the guts to ask his parents if he could drop out of school and pursue this full time.
Yeah.
And they basically were like, yeah, we agree that, you know, you put in the effort. And I think for him to be able to have confidence that he was good at something that he could go to his parents and say it's worth it and them actually agree with it, I think that was everything for him because it wasn't out of rebellion. It wasn't like, I'm going to go live my life, Mom or Dad. It was just, no, this guy believes in me because he's actually been down that road. And I know y'all don't believe in this yet, but just wait. And I think that was the process. Just wait.
Yeah.
And when your mind can see something that you deem valuable or worthy of like the risk, they were like, okay, it's time. And I think for his parents just to validate it was huge for him, you know?
Yeah. It's so interesting, like hearing the story, it's like, it's so inspiring, but even where I sit in the moment where I've done something where I'm able to have freedom, I still have this hesitation and this sense of fear of going all in while still maintaining something that supports, even right here, what I'm doing with you. This is a new venture for me. I am so programmed to think of what is the monetary value of sitting here in even just a year or two. How would you say you seem to not naturally have that struggle? Have you talked to people who do? And what is your address to them to not think about that anymore?
Sure. Yeah. So one thing I've said, you know, all through my 20s and 30s was that when you jump off a cliff 100 times and you never die, like jumping off cliffs becomes boring or just natural, right? Where everybody's like, I'll never jump off that cliff. Yeah. It's like, I've jumped off so many cliffs and nothing bad has happened. And I'm like, call it whatever you want. I have a relationship with the Lord and I feel like he prompts me in those areas and I have the faith and the trust just to do it.
Yeah.
And I think because I don't have anything, I don't have any bad stories to say like, oh man, I did that and totally missed it. Now, I'm not saying that I didn't fail in some capacity, but is failure really failure? It's not. Failure, it means it just didn't work out the way I thought, but something worked out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what people have to get over is like that one thing that's causing fear inside of you is actually causing you not to live your life. Like you're looking at it as a decision. If I create this one decision, it's going to mess things up. But actually, no, that one decision has full control over your entire existence. And I'm not a guy, I get ticked off at that. I'm like, I'm not letting one decision tell me how to live my life.
So you want to knock it down to prove.
I'm like, no.
Okay.
No, I'm going to move that thing out of the way. And life, like I said, and life is whatever it is. Yeah. And maybe that thing comes to fruition. But even if it doesn't, whatever is on the other side is going to be fruitful and amazing. And I'll welcome it.
The knocking down of the object in the way. The obstacle is the way. You ever heard of Ryan Holiday? He talks about that. When you knock over the obstacle, that is the thing at which usually ignites the next obstacle. But every time you knock down an obstacle, you then build confidence and meet more people. Definitely. So in essence, the obstacle is the most dangerous thing to stay behind.
Yep.
By knocking it down or crawling over it, you actually create more freedom, more opportunity, and a stronger confidence towards not being as risk averse, right? Is that what I'm...
Risk takers?
Yeah, you're more of a risk taker.
Yes.
In that way. What is the craziest thing that you feel personally you have done, and what was the result thereof?
I mean, a lot of just work wise, I've literally grown my businesses. I mean, I don't even know what the benchmark this day. I feel like the benchmark for most people is like, if I can make six figures, like I'll be happy or I'll be settled. That's usually what people, and I've grown my businesses, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 times, well over six figures. And within, 6 months, totally just chopped it off to making like nothing guaranteed. Like you're talking like 20 grand, right?
For like a season, 20 grand was like all you could really see.
Well, that was like all from a Monday to a Tuesday. From Monday making well over six figures to Tuesday, I only have guaranteed about 20 grand. Dang. And this is with kids and a wife and all that. And if I allowed that thought to creep in and create the fear, man, who knows what my life would have been. I probably would have just been like, oh, timid, been working at Krispy Kreme donuts, just to whatever. But I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually allow this to fuel more risk. Man, I'm going to go blow and go whatever. I'm going to go meet as many people as I can. I'm going to go knock on doors. I'm going to make phone calls. I'm going to email people, whatever.
Yeah.
And I never went too far down those paths before. That's what I'm saying. You never know what you're going to get. It's like a choose your own adventure book. But
so you never allowed yourself to go down so far of the path without putting in the work to build some sort of bridge that creates the next step. Mm-hmm. But you also never worked too much. So how do you balance knocking down enough doors, cutting enough trees to also, when your son can honestly answer and say, yeah, dad hasn't worked more than 20, maybe 30 hours a week in the entire time I've known.
It's finding the potency of whatever you're really, like I said, if you're really good at, let's say you build houses, for instance.
Yeah.
And let's say, the guy maybe walks away with $200,000, building the full house and, managing everything himself or whatever. But that house is like so consuming. Maybe he only built one a year. Let's just say it was so stressful. But if he broke it all out into segments and he's like, even though I'm building the house, where the money's at is the kitchen cabinets. Like, let's just say he did that.
He did all the math and that was the
and he's like, dude, the profit's in the kitchen cabinets.
Yeah.
I'm building the house. And then he said, I'm going to strip it all away and I'm only going to do cabinets, right? And maybe he did 10 houses that year, but it was the precision and the excellency that he could just blow through those cabinets was so fast because he's not having to wait for the whole house to be done. He can just get the cabinets done and move on to the next job. And then he looks at his year and he's like, dude, we made 200, 300 grand just doing cabinets. That's how I've always looked at my life. I'm not focused on trying to just do what I want to do. I'm like, this season, I need to tap in inwardly and how can I just get the most potency and efficiency out of what I can do to get the money I need, not just like, just throw myself out there and just suck myself dry of time.
Okay. See, that's creating more clarity in the conversation for me because I'm like, okay, you're on one hand, you're saying I go for the moon, I get the MGM Lion. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, you're saying, well, I just do the potency. But the MGM Lion doesn't sound like potency. The MGM Lion sounds like a lot of time calling people. Yep. It wasn't precise. But then also what you're saying is it's seasons. Sometimes I'm going for the MGM Lion. Sometimes I am going for the money. I am going for what I know will make the most amount of money in the smallest amount of time so we can then take the step into the next thing. Is that right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. That creates a lot of clarity.
Yeah.
In my mind, just
and it's all of it. That's the thing about a life that I've kind of lived is that you have to flex on a lot of things. Otherwise you will go crazy.
Yes.
But when you realize you're just, okay, I'm okay with it. Like even, the songwriting, I do tons of songwriting.
Yeah.
I have a contract with NBC in LA, got a contract with Alcon Entertainment. And those are all things that I didn't go chase those things.
Okay.
20-year-old Amick, that's all he ever wanted to do. I mean, I spent 10 years trying to get those relationships, knocking on every door I could. Hey, listen to me, look at me, listen to me, look at me. And then I remember getting so burned out by all of it.
Okay.
I burned my social media and I said, I'm never going back. Like it was just so disgusting, the self-promotion. Personally, I'm like, I'm doing all this stuff and I'm like, what's the point? And I remember I said, you know what? It's over. I literally canceled social. And I had tons of social media clients, and I literally was like, I can no longer service social media. Sorry, because I'm no longer on social media.
I don't want it. I don't care.
I did, and I was like, it's over.
Okay.
And then it was funny though, by just doing the music for fun, because I was like, now there's no chance those things are going to ever happen. Like that's what I thought. But then I just had music for fun. I was writing, recording more music than I ever had. And then I literally started getting emails and calls out of the blue. I heard your music and I want to sign a contract with you. It literally happened without me even wanting it, as a byproduct of me just living it passionately with joy and not trying to get it. And I just naturally found myself, I'd be at this table maybe talking about design, but these people are now in the licensing world, didn't even know it, you know? So like little interesting things like that. It's just you can't, this isn't a formula, right? Like you can't like write it all out and be like, this is how I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
All I could say is that you have to be willing just to live the life you have and just see what happens, you know, and flex from season to season. Do what you got to do, but don't do too much that you just lose out on life, you know. Do what you got to do and then have margin to explore. Like, you know, my son, we hang out all the time. Like today we were building fences, you know, before we got here.
Yeah.
You know, I like working with my hands, and nobody pays me to build a fence.
I was going to say, so many people would discourage you. So many like multimillionaire business owners would say, you hire out anything and everything and optimize at all corners of your life.
Yeah.
But then the problem that you run into is you're then getting somebody else's dream. Your dream isn't to be a deca millionaire, is it?
No. Well, I would say it used to be.
Okay.
I'd be okay with that if
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah.
But I won't sell my soul or sell my life to get it. Like,
yeah. You're not willing to sacrifice the fence building, which is conversations, which is enjoying time with your son, which is doing something with your hands to get that.
Yep.
If it's a byproduct of the hard work in a unique way, then it aligns with your ultimate goal, which is to enjoy life and pursue opportunities.
Yep. I
good.
totally just jacked it up.
No, it's fantastic. This is exactly why I started this. This is for me to loosen myself from the rigidity of my systems. I'm a huge systems and processes person. And so for me, the fruitfulness of exploration is actually greater than systems and processes. That's what I'm hearing through our conversation.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm going to pull it back because this is the way my mind thinks. What systems and processes do you have to make sure the work does get done? Because you're not a floundering artist by any stretch.
And I'm a highly OCD, like, systems probably isn't necessarily the word. It's more like organization. It's more like, how can everything have a place where I can breathe? That's how I operate. It's like, you know, so you talk to my wife, the last 2 weeks, all I've ever done, like the last 2 weeks, is organize our whole house, reorganize our garage, our yards. I mean, I'm telling you, I ripped out everything to the point my wife's having a panic attack. But the reason I did all that, because for me, it's systems aren't necessarily daily. Systems are like still seasonal. It's like I set everything up in a system where it has its place so that I can relax.
I totally get that.
So that I can chill. So that if I get a spark of work tomorrow that's like, I need you to blow through 40 hours of work in 2 days. Like if I needed to do that, I don't have to like go through the crap to make a clean space to work. And like, how am I going to get my thoughts? I've already done all the preparation and the systems part so that I can just, flex and free. Like I did all that so I could even be here. Like all that stuff was done. I didn't have the projects that I'm like, oh no, man, am I going to be able to come and do that? No, all that stuff was done preliminary in preparation so that I had the free time to do whatever I want to do. I can go fishing today if I wanted to.
So you are the one who sets up structure and organization to produce freedom.
Exactly.
You don't hope that freedom comes.
Yeah.
That is it. Like that is it. I feel like so many times people expect freedom to come because they are a free person. I'm a free person, so that means that I have freedom. But actually, you've created bondage because you haven't created a space at which you can access that freedom for what you want it to be used for.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So you've talked a little bit about your wife. And again, the reason I dig into this is because I have a very type A wife who has dreams and desires and goals that are some aligned with mine, some not aligned with mine, just by the way I think. Yep. What are some of her dreams and how do they clash with yours? Unless you're just so open that they don't clash. I'm really curious about that.
So our dreams, not necessarily. So my wife's not a dreamer. She'll say she's not a dreamer at all. She's a very practical, like just comfortable. She likes, if it tells you anything, she likes sweatpants and warm fuzzy blankets. Like that's that's just how she is.
Yeah, my wife, if it's something isn't comfortable,
Yeah.
she's not wearing it.
That's how she is.
Yes.
So that, it's just her personality. So even like dreaming, she has things she wants to do.
Okay.
But she would almost like cut it off before it was ever a dream. Like, oh, you have dreams? Oh no, don't get me wrong. It's not a dream. Like that's how she is. She's just like very like, oh no, I'm cool just being who I am. So, but there are things that she's good at. There's things she's talented at. There's things that she wants to experiment and explore but not at the expense of it being a thing. She's you're like, don't try to put your pressure on me. This is a business idea. I was gonna experiment, you know?
Okay.
So we always have these weird dialogues where she'll come in and she'll say something and I do self-analyze her and I'll be like, oh man, this is great. And she's like, no. I don't want to do anything you're talking about. I was just telling you something fun that I was going to enjoy. So it's always been a struggle. But what I have found is that when I am, man, this is a tricky balance in the marriage. When I'm super confident in who I am, not what I do, like just who I am. Like when I look in the mirror and there ain't no one else around and I'm not defined by the work I do or the taps on the attaboys on the, when I'm confident in that, my wife feels the safest and she feels the freedom to explore whatever she wants because that creates, like we're saying, the time and the margin for her to just do whatever. So when there's seasons where I'm blowing and going and trying to get identity and all the things I'm doing and I'm like trying to chase the pats on the backs or the things, she feels restless because I'm so just doing that thing. She's not going to explore. She's not going to dream. She's not going to do whatever. So what I found is that we've been in seasons where, you know, like one thing simple for her, she didn't want to travel anymore. After 3 years, it was like, I want to just be in a house.
You were on the road for 3 years.
3 years.
Dang.
Traveled the country for 3 years.
That's amazing.
And when the grace was over, it was over. And I remember she's like, I don't want to be in there anymore. And for me, that was hard because I wanted to just keep going.
Okay.
I'd simplify my whole existence down to so minimalist. I couldn't even think about going back and adding all this other stuff on. So that conversation, when we started going down that road, I fought it. So in a sense, her dream was just having like a normal house and living on a cul-de-sac. Like that was her dream.
Yeah.
But it was hard for me. So what I had to do is get super confident, like I said, in who I was. Not the fact that I was confident in traveling the country and living in a camper and fishing every day. Like, no, confident in just being who I am. And if I was a firefighter tomorrow or if I was working at McDonald's, it didn't matter. That didn't define me. I'm just confident. I know who I am. I know it. So I worked on that for about 2 years, just getting confident again in who I was. And guess what? We moved to another house, a house in a cul-de-sac. And I looked at it with joy and perspective. I love it. I love what I'm doing. And, you know, it's just, like I said, it's just an extension of life. It's not who you are. And that could change tomorrow.
And that's, I think, why you probably are so open to it is because you know it could change tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And there's another adventure around the corner.
Yep.
Now, let me ask, what is the thing that allows you to sit and be confident in yourself? What was the start of the journey of realizing you could be? What is the source? Obviously, for us as believers, the source is Christ, but it's more complicated than that, as we are fallible human beings.
It's being utterly honest with yourself. And I find that most people are never utterly honest with themselves.
Where should you start? Where did you have to start being honest with yourself?
I had to start, it's a lot of personal stuff. It's a lot of personal reflection of, you know, when you're married, why do we keep getting in these arguments?
Yeah.
Like that, for instance.
Yeah.
And you want to point the finger at whatever. But if you're brutally honest with yourself, you're like, because I am prideful, because I'm arrogant.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm better or whatever, right? It's like the
I'm a bigger dreamer. If you only had as big of dreams as I had, you know, that kind of thing where you start throwing punches in your marriage.
But if you throw those punches at yourself and you're like, yeah, Amick, you're an idiot. You know, you need to change whatever. And it's not someone else calling out. You're calling out yourself. You look in the mirror and you're like, what are you going to do about it? It's not just self-reflection. You do whatever you got to do to change. So I would pick apart my life and I'd find the things that were creating those issues, those things that are like imbalances or whatever, and I'd work on it. I'd remove, like I said, stress and anxiety. Some things, if I had stress, I'd be like, I got to remove whatever's causing me stress because it's affecting everything. Or if there's, you know, unhappiness or contention or bad relationships or whatever, you just got to weed that stuff out. And a lot of that's even, you know, I remember even going through a season with my dad, had a very complicated relationship with my father.
Okay, you did.
Yep. And,
Okay.
And to the point to where I wrote him off for like a season, like 2 or 3 years. Never wanted to talk to him. Couldn't forgive him. Kind of a deal. And rode that out for a while, as long as I could, till I couldn't. And I remember getting to a point where it was like, I cannot be successful. I cannot be joyful. I cannot live life any further without it being just fake, unless I deal with this.
Everything was fake because the relationship with your father was fake.
And that was the brutal, honest part. It's like I could, give you whatever excuse to anyone.
Yeah.
But at the core, when I was brutally honest, I knew that was what was causing everything. I didn't trust people because of this. I didn't trust my wife because of this. I didn't trust people in business situations because of the way my dad, all the things.
Yeah.
It was just like, ugh. So then when I finally dealt with that, I chose to forgive my father. Called him up, started a beautiful relationship. We started golfing together.
Yeah.
And there's nothing there anymore. And my life exponentially changed overnight just by that one thing.
Did it take time to identify the actual resentment point? Because a lot of times we can be like, oh, it's this or it's that. Or did it take time to unearth that thing?
It did take time, but I found the time wasn't. It was like the Lord, for instance, picking the scab off, and there's like that rawness.
Yeah.
It's like, this is where I know what I need to do to get healing, or I know what I need to do, but the healing took place of seeing my dad like on an ongoing basis. It wasn't like the journey of just like time and working. No, it was like by being face to face, it kept mining it out, and then we kept going deeper and kept going deep. So it evolved because of relationship. It didn't evolve just because of like, hey, I forgive you, peace, I'll see you never.
Yes.
It wasn't that. It was like, no, by actually having to be in relationship, actually kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. So
the difference between forgiveness and restoration.
Mm-hmm.
So the restoration came because you knocked down the initial obstacle, which was your pride of wanting to commune with him again. Once that was knocked down, then there was the opportunity to dig through all of the things that created that problem.
Yeah, and I didn't even know that was going to do that. It just naturally happens when you're willing to submit to the process.
Yes.
When you're just like, I'm willing to show up tomorrow, and then I'm willing to show up the next day, and then I'm willing to... You don't know what's going to happen, but you're just willing to commit to that. And then at the end of it, you're just like, wow, I'm a different person.
Again, I go back to my systems and processes. How do you commit to things not knowing the end result?
Man, it is hard. I remember having a conversation one time with God, and it was about a job I was in. This is before I ever stepped out, like on my own. It was crazy. This is the hinge point.
Okay, how old are you?
Right now?
No.
Oh, so then I was 27 or 28, somewhere around there.
Okay.
27, 28. And I was working corporate world. I'd worked my way up as a marketing manager of a company. I mean, it was like as high as I could go, and still wasn't happy. And I knew I just wanted to go out on my own. And I remember having this like conversation with Chris. He was like, I feel like I could do it. And like I said, the fruit on the tree didn't exist. So she, it's like, no,
come back in a month.
You're not doing that. So I think about a year, we kind of went through that battle. But I remember finally getting so done, like just so fed up and just everything. I was just like, God, why don't you like help me out, man? Just whatever.
Yeah.
And then God was like, you didn't do what I told you to do. And I was like, what are you talking about? Didn't do what it was just kind of whatever. He's like, remember I told you to talk to that guy? And it was just like a guy that was like the owner's son that worked with me. And it was like God just like wanted me to go talk to him. And I was like, it wasn't even like anything like spectacular. It was just, I was like, yeah, you said that, but like, what does that mean? Like, that's minuscule.
Yeah.
I was like flabbergasted that he would like, God would even bring this up. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there for like 30 minutes in my office, and I'm like, fine, I'll show you.
I'll talk to the guy.
I'll show you. Go over there and knock on the door. And I was like, hey, and I got to talk to you. And I was like, I don't even know what to say, but I was like, do you even know who Jesus is? Like, or whatever. I was just like,
so it was more, he prompted you to talk to him about God.
Maybe.
Okay.
I didn't know what it was,
like,
but when I got in the office, I felt like maybe I just should start there because I was having it out with Jesus anyway.
Okay.
So I was just like, throw it out there. I was just like, so I say it, and he looks at me, he goes, oh man, it's crazy you say that. I literally just got off a camping trip this weekend with another guy I worked with, And literally all we talked about was Jesus. And I'm like, what? I was like, this is a sham. Like the whole thing seems so bizarre.
Who set this up?
And I was like, great, cool. All right. That's all. All right. So I literally went back to my office. I sit down. I'm like, what's the point? And that's what God said.
Okay.
He said, obedience is about obedience, not outcomes.
Okay.
So I say all that to say, so many times we can do things like because of a result or an outcome. Like, okay, God, I'll forgive my father, but only if it's going to bring me joy.
Yeah.
Or only if my life's going to get exponentially better. Or I'll do the hard thing, if I'm going to make $1 million. But what if it's only about that? Like, what if it's only about forgiveness? What if it's only about the fact that I would do because God wanted me to do it, and that's it?
Yeah.
What if it's only because my wife needs it?
Yeah.
Like, what if there's no other outcome?
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, I've been blessed in a sense that I've gone through really, really hard situations, a lot of hard situations under that paradigm that I've seen the fruit of no results, but just because it is what it is.
And you've felt the deep spiritual satisfaction of the obedience.
That, and even just everyday life, you know what I mean? Like, my life is so, even though I have faith, like, my life is not this bubble. I mean, I'm rubbing shoulders with tons of people and a lot of my life that have no faith. And so I've seen the fruit of it, of just living my life of saying, you know what, I'm going to go through it because I need to go through it, not because it's going to produce amazing results. It may, but that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because it needs to be done. You know, it needs to be done. I just uprooted millions of roots in my backyard that weren't my problem. There were thorns and thistles. Like, I'm just saying, like, it wasn't my problem. It was the person before me's problem.
Okay.
Right?
So
Like,
they didn't maintain this.
It was just
place.
horrible. And I looked at it and I was like, what's really the outcome that's going to bring me satisfaction with this? Nothing. But it needed to be done. Yeah. And I went and I just uprooted it, and it took a week of my precious time.
Your precious time. Exactly.
To do it, all right?
Yeah.
But when I got done, it was like, that was the reward. It needed to be done.
Yeah. Hard work is a reward in of itself.
Yeah, it needed to be done.
Sometimes. I appreciate that obedience for obedience. Man, there's so many things that you think about that you should start doing for that principle. But how hard it is for somebody like myself, who's very result and system minded. Oh man, there was something you said that really, really caught me. After you initially had that conversation about Jesus, you said that was a conversation you needed to have. You said you were wanting to leave corporate. What happened?
The next day, I literally got home, and Christy, out of the blue, said, "I think it's time for you to leave."
What was the fruit that she saw?
Like, there were things that were happening, like I said, that whole year of just, I was doing, that time, I think I was doing wedding photography on the side.
Okay, so you had some.
So I was working weekends, and I had made enough money. Like I said, from the first conversation, about a year, I think I was making my salary.
Okay.
Easily.
Yeah.
And just wedding photography, just on Saturdays. So for her, I think it was enough at that point. But I think it was, even though that's the fruit she saw, I think the timing was very interesting, how the very next day that I do what obedience was.
Totally.
That it was like, I felt like it was like God was like, I mean it. Like, you're just going to be stuck unless you just do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't get to be this spoiled brat that just like doesn't get to deal with stuff. It's like, no, we all know those people, and they're not fun to be around. Like, just be honest.
Yeah.
And it's like, I tell my son all the time, I'm like, life is what you make it. And you can choose to be that person, that entitlement, like, oh, I deserve whatever. Or you can just say, you know what? I'm not going to be that person, and I'm going to make it right regardless. I'm going to do what's got to be done. And I just find it's very interesting if you look at the timeline of my life, when I just do what needs to be done, it's funny how, like I said, the next day, my wife's just like, I think it's time to leave. And she didn't know anything about that. I never even told her.
Yeah.
It just happened. I'm like, what? Why now? She's like, I don't know. I just felt I had the peace. And I remember literally putting my think I gave them 2 weeks, but I think they only gave me 3 days. So
again, we're done with you anyway. How replaceable we are. It's often very humbling as well. You mentioned your son. He's here. And appreciate you bringing him. I just think it's so cool. I often want to bring my kids, but they're 2 and 4, my oldest. And the 2-year-old lasts about 15 minutes before he's tearing apart the studio. So what would you say are some ways that you're doing things intentionally for your children to see you're leaving a legacy of obedience? How are you leaving a legacy of obedience and work ethic? How are you intentionally trying to do that, or are you just trying to live it? What would you say? Because that's the question. Sorry, long question. Yeah, that's the question that my wife and I are asking now. We have twins, we have a 2-year-old, and we have a 4-year-old. And every day is a conversation of how are we going to give them a better start than we had? Yeah. Not that our start was bad.
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, we invite our kids into the mess.
Okay.
All messes. Like nothing's hidden.
Okay.
You know, we don't have this. I remember growing up and I didn't ever know what was going on in my mom and dad's life. I didn't really, you have these roles, but beyond the roles, you don't really know. Are they happy? Are they in love? Are they fighting? Does dad make enough money to provide? You know, like there's symptoms, but you don't really know.
Yes.
And I just decided we're not going to do that. Like our kids and when we moved in that camper for
there's no hiding.
Years, there's no hiding nothing.
Yeah.
And
we're going to the lake.
You can ask him right now how many times I'd literally be driving on the side of the road and pull over because I was having a moment, ticked off, and I'd go walk off in the woods and I'm like, where's dad? And my wife would tell him exactly what was going on and then we'd invite them, and they would, my kids would encourage me. My 6-year-old would put his hand on my shoulders and be like, Dad, it's going to be okay. And it wasn't this chasm between my kids and me. It was like, no, invite them in there. Because what happens is when they see all of it, they're making all these mental notes of like, okay, this is how my dad's living his life. This is fruitful. This is not fruitful.
Yeah.
This causes stress and anxiety. This makes him angry. This doesn't make him angry. Oh, this is really joyful. My dad's passionate about this. They can connect all the dots. They don't have to have this weird they don't have all the data. So that was the first thing we did. And what's cool is it opens up so many cool conversations. Like with my son, we talk all the time about money and work ethic and and he doesn't bring those conversations up out of the blue. It's prompted because he sees it day in, day out.
Yeah.
Like the reason, he's with me today is because he's with me a lot and most of the time. And he sees that it's not abnormal for him to be anywhere I'm at if I was with a high level professional, I wouldn't care what that person thinks. It's like, this is how I live my life. And that's what's important to me.
And if you don't want to line up with that, high level professional, then that's not the person I want to be doing business with.
Because that's who I am every day of the week. And I'm like I said, going back to what are confident, I'm confident in that. Maybe I used to not be confident, feel like I had to put on a show. I don't have to do that anymore. And so then the other thing would be is just letting them experiment on their own. Like I'm passionate about a lot and they see it.
Yeah.
But I don't ever push that on any of them. I like you say, lead and live my life passionately. And they'll come and be like, like music. They just try to get in music. I bought like these smaller guitars that they could play if they wanted to, but I never asked them to. Literally would just hang them up.
Yeah.
And I just set them there. And it was like, they would come to me and be like, hey, Dad, do you think I could check that out? Oh yeah, sure. Awesome. Let them take some time. And then it's funny. It never fails. When I go down and I'm just like in my office jamming and singing, they'll just come to the door and watch. And then my little one will light up and he'll grab his guitar and come in and play. And I say all that, it's just an analogy. But like if you're passionate about something and you just live your life passionately, you want your kids to be a part of all of it.
Yeah.
But if you give them the opportunities, and they don't have to be forced, but like the guitars, it could be whatever, like a computer, it could be software, it could be whatever. You just make it available and they see you passionate, they're going to be like, why is he so happy about this? I want to give that a shot.
That totally makes sense. Me and my wife have like ideas on what we want them to do because we feel like it would be good for them. However, like you're saying, you could give somebody something that's good for them and it could poison them.
Yep.
Just by the way it reacts in their personal character or their personal personality being different. One thing I did recently is I bought RC cars. I love RC cars. Yeah. I bought them RC cars for Christmas, and they are just like gung ho on them. Like it's just the greatest thing ever. Like they just, my 2-year-old has one, And he just like, it's just full throttle. Just bam, right into the fence. He's broken it multiple times, but we fixed it together. So he's learning how to fix things.
That's awesome.
But I see what you mean. Like, I often am so consumed with wanting to make sure that they have enough to provide for themselves, because it was a fear that I have had growing up, that I often miss out on the learn work ethic by the excitement, not the fear of what I'm doing.
Yep. Yeah. And, you know, specifically too, you know, like the journey you're on with fear, I know what fear feels like. Getting super personal, but I feel like, you know, it's only context. When I was 15, my 10-year-old sister died of cancer.
Dang.
And even though we were 5 years apart, she was my closest sibling. Like
only sibling?
No, I had two other sisters.
Okay.
But my younger one, for whatever reason, she was kind of a tomboy. We connected like on every level. She wanted to be with me 24/7. Okay. So when she died, I just remember it being like, I mean, it was daily, just this crippling fears of like, am I going to be like her? Am I going to die? Whatever. I mean, like, she was helpless. If she could die and be helpless, and like, you know, and, you know, just all the things, you're like, she was perfect and I'm horrible. Like, just as a college kid, that'll freak you out. You're like, oh man, if she can die and be perfect, and I'm just like as carnal as they come, like, I don't stand a chance.
Dang.
You know, so fear, it was just fear. But I do remember a moment of just being like, fear is ruining my life.
Yeah.
It just is. Every decision I make is based off that.
Yeah.
It's not because I enjoy it. It's because I'm afraid of not enjoying it or afraid of whatever. And I just remember when I mean, it was a journey, but I finally just broke up with fear. It was like, you're not my girlfriend no more. Like, we're no longer a thing.
It's a pretty strong visual.
See you later.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I'm not saying I don't still deal with that, but I have way more life existence now.
Yeah.
To say, you know, I didn't need fear than the life existence that said I did need it.
Absolutely.
And why would I ever go back to something when I have way more like life experience to say, no, that supports that. I don't ever need that again. I'm never going to pick that up. I don't, you know, so even, you know, the journey you're on, I feel like that would be the goal. Like break up with fear, but chase the life experiences that are going to prove that you don't need it.
I was going to say, I feel like they're in tandem. I feel like you not only broke up with fear, but replaced it with something more satisfying, which I think is often in our faith, right? When we break up with our sin, if we don't replace it with something constructive, Jesus talks about that. You sweep out one demon and 7 more will return. And that is where you can really replace it with something more, something you can really sink your teeth into, find life in, and find joy in. Yeah, I can say that, still struggling with it. And that's something that's very challenging. Man, I've enjoyed this so much, and this is, for me alone, this is showing me that there's more to life than the financial pursuits of a given activity. And so I'm super grateful that you came on.
Thanks so much.
What is one question that you hoped I would ask you?
Man, I honestly didn't think about that, but
I'm always curious if they have, like, I kind of always have like these like patterns or things that I want to communicate with people. I wondered if there's something that.
Yeah, I would say, kind of talking about the word luck. You know, I've heard the word luck a lot over my life. Okay. You know, I'll sit down at dinners with people and just share stories and talk about life experiences, and people just laugh. They're like, man, you're so lucky, or whatever like that. And man, my life is not lucky whatsoever. And, you know, it's luck to me doesn't exist at all. It's just, I don't know what people say, it was like when opportunity meets preparation or whatever, you know.
Love that.
And
great line.
And I just feel like, especially in the age of, man, the technological world with YouTube, with social media influencing, with a lot of the job, like this actual job, like tracks, you know, like people are like, oh, I'm going to do that with my career. I think with we see the luck of it so much, like, oh, this person started whatever, and oh, you're lucky because it kicked off. But it's not luck. It's like, it actually took a lot of hard work, and it took a lot of effort and a lot of passion and a lot of hard days and a lot of, you know, it took a lot of criticism. It took so much criticism and saying, you know, I'm not going to be defined by the criticism. There's just a lot of that, and I feel like, you know, all the things that, you know, luck. The swirl of luck, you know, dictates. It just isn't it's not practical. It's not real. It doesn't, to me, it just doesn't exist. It's like, no, it's real hard work.
Going after something, ignoring the criticism, going through the tough times in your marriage, showing the fruit, and hoping you can gain trust in your, sometimes people are in marriages where they don't have trust from their spouse.
Yep.
So how can you focus on building trust with your spouse? Not just tearing them down and saying, oh, you don't have faith in me. You don't have faith in my idea.
So I'm a man that ask me to prove it. Like I'm a man that I'm not afraid for anybody to ask me to prove it.
Yeah.
I'll prove it.
I'll give it a go.
I'll prove it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, in order to prove it, you got to risk some things. It's like, you can ask my best friend. I was going through a season where my wife was literally clinically depressed. We had actually had 6 miscarriages.
Dang.
Trying to have kids.
Yeah.
Imagine the heartache of that, to the point she can't get out of bed. You know what I did? I proved that she was worth it. Proved that she was everything to me without offering anything. I quit everything and literally sat by her bedside for a solid year.
Dang.
And just loved her.
Was that before you had any children, or was that
we had one kid.
one child? Okay.
Isaac. Yeah. He was a baby.
Oh my word.
And but I did that, like I said, because it wasn't about doing all this stuff and trying to bridge the gap. No, she was the priority, not this.
Yeah.
And although all this pays the bills, I'm gonna make this the priority, and then figure out a way on the side to pay the bills. Like that. That's a huge mental shift to do that, but I was able to do it. She was the priority.
Did you have to ask her questions to figure out what you needed to do, or was it literally just sitting with her and having conversations? Like, because a lot of times my wife can get, we have a great marriage, and she is incredible, but I get bad in the marriage where I'm like trying to ask her how I can make our marriage better.
Yeah.
And she's like, thank you for asking, but you're making it easy on yourself by just having me solve all your problems.
Yeah. So this season, I didn't ask anything. I just was there.
Okay.
And that's what she needed. She just needs someone to be there.
Okay.
And seasons past, I'd be like, hey, what you want to do? What do you want me to do? How can I help? Like
You're right.
bugging her to
You're right.
death.
Yes,
And
I'm so famous for
and
that.
she's like, I don't even want to hear you talk right now.
Your voice?
We want to fix it. We want to fix it. We want to fix it. But, and I think that's part of the season. When I knew that's what she needed, she needed me, then I realized she needed me. She didn't need this. She didn't shut this up and just be there.
Yeah.
And that made all the difference. And I remember even just get people literally, enough's enough, Amick. Like literally. Like
enough's enough for caring for your wife.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, oh, you got things to do. You're wasting your time. Like stupid stuff.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how people are never willing, like I say, to prove it. People are never willing to die on their own sword. People are never willing to do what it takes to fix a problem.
Yeah.
They just think it's just going to fix with minimal effort because I got all this stuff going on, man. I don't want to mess all this up. I don't want to mess up my mojo. I don't want to mess up my algorithm. I don't want to mess up my bleh, whatever, whatever it is. Like, no, jack up your algorithm and go fix the thing that needs fixing.
Because that is the thing that ultimately will sustain the length of your life, not the moment of your life.
Exactly.
Okay, if you don't mind, Isaac, do you want to step in for a second?
Yeah.
Slide your chair over. Because we talked a lot about you. What has your dad done that has really you feel like empowered you to pursue things that you want to and given you the confidence to do things in life that you're interested in?
Talking with him, and he just helps with certain things that I ask questions about and just talk a lot about with him.
Tell me about when we were in the camper, there were things that you enjoyed doing but you never experienced before. Remember that?
Yeah.
So introducing you to opportunities.
Yeah.
So tell them about something.
In the camper, I've loved snakes my whole life.
Okay.
And just since I was born, and I always liked catching them. And once we moved in the camper, I was able to catch more because we would go to more places. And we would go to campgrounds, and I would pull hundreds of snakes and just start walking around the campground with them.
Oh my gosh.
And I've had people come up to me and be like, what are you doing? You can't do that.
So he's equipped you to do what you're interested in. He's told you that it's okay to be interested in what you like.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's awesome. I just, for me as a dad, right? I have a 4-year-old. What's your youngest sibling?
10 and 9.
9.
Okay, 9. Okay, so my oldest is 4. Then we have 2. Then we have a year and a month for the twins. And so, what would you tell me is foundational to having a good relationship with your dad?
He spends more time a lot with me, and since I'm older, he talks about more stuff that I need to like know as I grow up and get older.
Are they things that you would naturally ask, or is he bringing things up that you're like, oh, Dad, dang, I didn't think about that?
Sometimes, but yeah, most of the time, like he'll just bring it up.
So it's more him being present enough to pursue the opportunity to enlighten you. And do you feel like he's telling you what you need to know or telling you what to do, or is he more like asking you questions about things that you maybe haven't thought of?
More of like asking questions.
Okay. Do you remember him ever being harsh?
No, sometimes, but
Be honest.
Yeah. Seriously.
I mean, yeah, but not like.
No big deal.
Yeah.
Not unnecessarily. Not where it felt like you were just being, hopefully, understand, like berated, as in just like he thought you were too little or too foolish or too misunderstanding. It was more like, hey, I'm doing this because I want to see you grow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sometimes his fathers were reactionary, so like it may come across harsh, or we're like, we're dealing with an issue.
Yeah.
Or we're like, and it feels like abrasive as a kid. But what I've always tried with him is that, we deal with something, but it's always with love. And then we explain why we're dealing with it, and we explain the repercussions of things. And, and that's not always easy as a father.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have the time.
Yeah.
It's like, but if you have the time, you can actually spend, those situations that, he's growing up to be a man. Those issues are just going to get worse and worse.
Yeah.
And crazier and crazier. And it's like, I almost like my time needs to continue to grow even more margin as he's getting older, because there's going to be so much more things that he's going to have questions and need in his life,
Yeah. Yeah. My wife and I have talked about that, where we are, in a sense, trying to build our life to what we want it to be, so we can have the availability, like to go out and build fences, to just, in a sense, it's goof off, right? Like show our children that we're goofing off and we can spend time with them, because that's where conversations happen. I guess my last question for you, Isaac, would be, do you care about snakes, first of all, Amick?
I hated snakes.
Okay.
Until I had a son that loved them.
Okay.
And then you can't be the wussy dad
Right.
with the confident son with a snake.
Right. Absolutely.
So I make everybody believe I like snakes, but I still don't care for them.
Okay. So you've even showed your dad things that he can enjoy or find a fondness of. Yeah. Maybe not love as much as you.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about snakes as I've grown up, and I tell him about things that sometimes he doesn't believe me. Most of the time I'm right.
Yeah.
And I just tell him certain things about certain snakes, and he'll usually, but yeah, he learns off of me from snakes.
Yeah.
A lot.
So
that's cool.
Since we're talking about Isaac, I'm going to share this a little bit.
Okay.
So one of the main reasons we had moved in the camper was because of him.
Okay.
So he was going to a private school.
Yep.
And he kept getting in trouble because the teachers just said he don't fit. He just can't sit still. There was all these bad things. But at the core, it was like, no, he was just who he was. He was in an environment that wasn't conducive to how he
Were you bored? Yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember we were like, we can continue this path and trying to fight with teachers for him to basically be conformed to a behavior that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Or we could say, no, what does our son actually need?
Yeah.
And we knew he was a wild man at heart, but had never really been wild.
Have you read that book, Wild at Heart?
No, he needs to.
Okay, so you got to get on that. Perfect timing, man. It's awesome.
You'll love it.
Yeah.
And so we basically were like, we're going to totally change our life up for our kids. And
cool.
From day one, he came alive. It was
awesome.
Like he was a totally different person, being able to thrive in who he was naturally gifted in being. And he could tell him the story of that time in Texas, what happened with that man.
Do you remember where we were?
It was Conrad, Texas.
Okay. And we stayed at this campground, and we got there, and there was like deer everywhere. Just like they would probably 100 to 200 deer would come up to your door and just sit there. But there was 2 ponds at the campground, and we love fishing. So we went down there, and we were fishing, and I was catching a bunch of fish, and there's this guy on the other side. He wasn't catching anything. And I went over there, and I showed him what to use and how to, like, do it. He started catching, like, some biggest bass I've seen, just, like left and right, and it was like...
He was, like, about to cry. he had never had those experiences before, being able to actually, like, even at a 10-year-old, mentor and creatively engage with people that he was passionate about.
Yes.
And here he was literally teaching a 50-year-old man how to catch fish, which was laughable, a 10-year-old. But when he actually did catch the biggest fish he ever had, he couldn't believe. He was almost like filled with tears. Yeah. It was pretty crazy.
Was it your idea to go over and like chat with him, or was it kind of both of you guys?
His idea,
but I love that. Like, he equipped you, and it was probably went there with you. So he equipped you to start understanding relationship. Like, you're not just yourself. You're not on an island. People are involved around you, and people have needs, and often those people can reciprocate your needs. And that is something that with fishing you're able to learn at such a young age. That's inspiring to me. Like, that's helping me understand how to do it better with my children. Amick and Isaac, thank you.
Dude, thanks so much.
Isaac, thank you so much for coming out. I am honored that you took the time and that you have the ability to make the time. So thank you so much.